Good evening. So I want to talk a little bit about methods and how we use them and how we create them and kind of the reasoning behind it. We touched on this real briefly before in one of the earlier videos, which was about the Java syntax in general. But I feel like methods are an important enough topic that I want to give it a little bit more time. So let's talk a little bit about the intuition behind them and when we should create methods and how we go about it. So in general, the idea behind it is that we want to uh, we want to group similar functionality together. And actually, I'm going to back up a little further and not even say functionality. We want to have ideas be grouped together. And so if we find some code that represents a single idea, that might be a method, right? And so generally, a method should be about one single idea. It should be responsible for one thing. We don't want to have methods that do a lot. All right, so let's take a look at this. So this is a really short program. This main method, it's actually responsible for everything right now. Okay, so it's responsible for spitting out messages to the user. It's responsible for taking input. It's responsible for doing a calculation. It's responsible for doing output. So what we're going to try to do here is to split this up into the different ideas about what needs to happen, and we're going to create methods to do that. So first step, from an intuition standpoint, you'll notice that we have some blocks here. So we have this block here, which has got a comment above it, which is marked as input. And then we have another block here with a comment above it marked base, one for computation, and then one for the output statement, right? These are pretty good indicators that these are methods just waiting to be created. So let's go ahead and start doing that. So you'll notice up here what's happened is we've actually declared all the variables up front. In general, we probably want to avoid this when possible. There's times when it might be a good idea, but it's usually a better idea to declare a variable as close to the place that you're going to use it as possible. So for what we're going to do here, let's go ahead and we're going to take height and we're going to declare it down here. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with base. And then we're going to do the same thing with area. So this line is not even necessary anymore. So I'm just going to get rid of those. So now what I've got are these same ideas, but they're not reliant upon variables that have been declared elsewhere. So now we're ready to start creating methods that will handle these things for us. So I'm going to show you the by hand way of doing this, and then I want to show you the shortcut way of doing this. So let's go ahead and create a method here that's going to handle the input for us. Okay, so let's see, static double. Let's see, and this is going to be get height. Okay, and then we're going to take the scanner. Okay. All right, so I've declared a method that is of type double, which means I have to return the double out of here. So to satisfy this and to make our compiler errors go away, I could just return 0, but that doesn't do what we want. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this block of code and I'm going to take it down here to the method. All right, so now what I'm doing, oh, and I need to return that. Okay, so far so good. And then up here, this is going to be height, and I'm going to say get height, and I'm going to pass the scanner, excuse me, it's called input there, as the argument to the parameter down here, right? So let's change this to input as well. So now what we've got is a method which is kind of hiding away the implementation of how we get the height. Okay, so it's a little bit better. So this method retrieves, it outputs a message. to the user, and then it retrieves whatever the input that the user enters from there. So let's go ahead and run that real quickly, make sure we didn't break anything. Okay, so let's enter the height. I'll say 5. Let's enter the base. I'll say 10. All right, so that seems to be about correct. So let's see, 5 times 10 is 50, times 0.5, 25. So that seems to be correct. So we got a pretty good pattern here. So we've introduced a new method, and we did that by hand. Okay, so the good news is that with IntelliJ, there's actually a faster way to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little shortcut, which on my machine, because I'm on a Mac, is Command-Alt-M. But I believe on a Windows machine, the same operation is ready there. It's just use Control instead of Command. So let's use the shortcut now. Okay, and look, it already kind of named it for us, right? You'll notice that in the shortcut view, it knows that it's going to be static. It knows the visibility is going to be private. Don't worry about that right now. And I'm going to go ahead and do the refactor. So at this point, it's still using the input, which is declared as a static variable up here, but I want to change that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say input like that. So now it's using the whatever the argument is that we're passing in for that parameter. So same thing here. Okay, and actually I'm going to get rid of these comments because now what we have are named methods that describe what we're doing. So we don't actually need the comments anymore. Well, I'm going to do the same thing here because now what I've got is this idea about a computation. So let's extract that as well. Okay, and so we're going to call getArea, and we're passing in the height and the base this time as the parameters. Let's go ahead and refactor. And oh yeah, once again, we want to, actually no, input's not even necessary this time. So again, I don't need the comment because I've got a named method that does this. So I'm going to get rid of the comment there. And then we have the output statement, right? So let's take this. I'm going to go ahead and extract that too. Okay, so let's do that. It takes all three. It takes the height, the base, and the area. And this is going to be, let's say, create output. Actually, yeah, let's go with create output statement. Generate output statement, generate output statement. So you'll notice what I'm doing is kind of wobbling about what the name is going to be. This is something you're going to find yourself doing with methods, and sometimes it'll be easy, sometimes it'll be hard. It seems like it trends on the hard side sometimes, and that's just the life of a programmer. So you're going to find yourself doing that quite a bit. Okay, so now what we've got, and get rid of that comment, is we've got a much shorter main method, right? And when it needs to figure out the height, the base, the area, or how to generate the output statement, it does that by delegating to these other methods. And these other methods only have one responsibility apiece, right? So you might be kind of asking yourself, well, why did I do that? You know, now I've got, it looks like maybe twice the amount of code, and it's a little bit jumbled. Okay, well, the thing is that when you go to make a change, now it's going to be much easier to make that change because you only have to touch a small part of the code versus touching the rest of it. The other advantage that we're going to get from methods here is that this really sets us up for later when we want to start extracting classes that will do these things for us. So instead of having methods that main will call, it might actually delegate out to another class entirely to do this. So let's experiment with that for a moment. Let's say that we want to create a class that is responsible for these things, okay? And so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create a new class. And I'm going to call this, let's see, I'm going to call it view model. So a view model is basically a class that knows how to interact with the view, or the UI in this case, and it holds some kind of data for the purpose of manipulating it to output back to the view. Okay, so I'm going to take it a little bit further. I'm going to create a constructor, and you'll learn more about this later. And for the constructor, I'm going to say, I'm going to pass the scanner. So let's go ahead and import that. Okay, and so I need to make the scanner available to the rest of the class. So when I create an object, the scanner is going to be there. Okay, and I'm going to use a shortcut to create a property. Yep. Okay. It's final, and that's okay because I don't plan on changing it. So I've got this class, and so now we've got two classes. Well, what do we do with that? Let's go back here, and what I want to say is I'm going to actually use the view model, right? And then I'm going to take input. So I'm going to pass the scanner that is the input as an argument to the constructor of this class. So now I've got my view model, right? So what if I can say this? I guess before I can do that, let's move these methods, and I'm going to lift them completely out of here, away from main, and I'm going to actually put those in the class here. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of static. You'll learn more about why we're doing that after a little bit. Okay. And actually, I want to get rid of this as well. Again, you don't really need to know about private at the moment. That's not something that we want to concern ourselves with because we're just talking about methods. Okay. And so what I want to do is I am going to go back here, and I'm going to use the view model to do these things instead. So let's say get the height, right? And you know what? I'm not going to pass the input anymore. I'm just going to use the one that's on the class. So let's go ahead and remove that, right? And that still works because I'm passing the input into my class here, and it's already available. So that's why that's going to work, right? Now, to keep this working, what I need to do for the moment is this. So really, I can get rid of, oh, that's height, excuse me. So I can get rid of that line, okay? Let's do that again. Okay, and again, I'm gonna not pass the base in anymore. So I'm just gonna remove that parameter from the method. Again, I use a shortcut to do that. You'll notice that it updated it automatically for me. And then I'm gonna do the same thing here. Okay, and I'm gonna pass the height and the base for now. Okay, so now the way this kind of breaks out is we've got a view model that's responsible for getting the height, getting the base, getting the area, and then generating the output statement. Main doesn't know how to do any of this stuff. So let's go ahead and run the program again and make sure everything still works. And what's the difference here? Why is this complaining? Get and is never used. Void generate output statement is never used. I'm using it right there. See, and get area is never used. Let's go ahead and run that anyway. There we go. Okay, so get height, let's put 5. Again, I'm going to put 10. All right, and again, we got 25. So it does exactly what we wanted it to. The difference is that now main doesn't know anything about this. My view model is actually responsible for interacting with the user and performing the calculation now. So this code is probably a little bit cleaner than what we had before. And like I said, as we get more into objects and classes, using methods will be more and more important. But the general idea is that we want to identify chunks of code that represent an idea, group them together, and then create a method which is responsible for that functionality. And as we create more methods, we'll have an ability to go off and create a class that will hold those new methods. So it's similar to what I just did here. I think, like I said, I think this is going to be really important as you move forward, and I just wanted to give it a little bit more clarity as to how and why and when we're going to create methods. That's all I got. So thank you.